Hey everyone, welcome to Darkling Alley. I'm Jay here with Tempest,
Hello.
and we are doing a video about our commentary from our Alan Wake gameplay.
Yeah, because we had a lot to say during a lot of things that we pointed out during our gameplay, but I mean, gameplays are hard to watch sometimes because they're long and sometimes people don't have time to sit through them. So we thought we'd just go over some key things because there's a lot of things that we did point out that we really want to make sure that people hear because they're usually things that we don't hear very often. So we're excited about them and want to share them. So that's what we're doing today.
Yeah, so hopefully these shorter videos will captivate you and encourage you to watch more, and we hope you guys enjoy.
Yep, let's go. So what we did for this game is it's called a detailed gameplay, which means that we try to focus on everything, all the conversations, all of the things in the surroundings, the environment, things that might be important. And we try to put focus on them without always actually verbally pointing them out. So that's what our gameplay was all about. So he calls this guy a hitchhiker, but there's no actual indication. I know this is kind of a minor gripe, but there's no indication that he's a hitchhiker. He didn't have his thumb out or anything. He was just standing in the road. What it kind of seems like is that already Alan is sort of assigning a role to the first person that he sees in the game. And he'll go on to continue doing that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he was just kind of randomly standing in the road, and he didn't give any indication that he was a hitchhiker. I just thought he was some random vagrant.
That's what I thought too. I saw him just standing in the middle of the road. And what's really interesting too is he's like, they show it from above and you can see that half of his body is like on one side of the road and the other is in the other lane. And Alan's car is that way too. It was like he was driving right down the middle. So his, it's kind of like reminds me of maybe a symbolism type thing,
Yeah.
Two different, realities running together, parallel. A lot of what the theme is in this game.
Honestly, if you're standing in the middle of the road, you're kind of asking to get hit.
Okay, so here we got Night Springs. This is cool too because there's also a sign for Rain Cove Point for the lighthouse. And that is the lighthouse. I mean, Night Springs is not supposed to be real in his reality. It's a show. But here we have Rain Cove Point, and that is supposed to be real in his reality. So we have this now already, what he'll talk about later, about dreams and reality blending together. I mean, the car even has license plates that are Washington State. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's not like... I mean, he knows, obviously, if this is a dream, he's on his way to Bright Falls, Washington. Mm-hmm. He's like, he knows in his head that he's going to Washington. So that probably not a big deal, but it's kind of cool that it's there. Okay, so now we get to see a bit of really good foreshadowing here. The tunnel that Alan just came out of is now sealed up, and the bridge across the way is collapsed. So right away, we're going to know that Alan is going to have trouble getting to where he needs to go. And that's exactly what happens throughout the game. So
That was really fast Mason work.
yeah, that was. Well, I guess, dream logic.
That's right.
It makes sense there. Now, I really like this part here because it shows the picture of him missing. Have you seen this man? He's not named. And then it has just the diver suit. It doesn't have any name, Tom the Poet, or, like the movie, mm-hmm. or anything. It's just an empty diver suit with no indication of what it's for. Yeah. So we're going to find out later. I think that we're going to have a pretty good idea. Thomas Zane is still really a mystery to a lot of people. And even I'll admit, like, I am only now just getting a better understanding after I went through and actually did analysis. We haven't put out the video yet, but I did an analysis. I went through the whole entire game and noted everything down about Alan's writing, not about the events of the game, but about the writing. And that actually brought a lot out. It was really different than just writing about the game itself. So that is going to be our next analysis video. This isn't an analysis, so we're really excited for that one. So we don't want to ruin things too much for people who haven't read the Alan Wake files. People are doing videos on the Alan Wake files. We're doing some ourselves. But Clay Stewart is the author of the Alan Wake files. And he has claimed in his book to have been sharing some dreams with Alan Wake for quite a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he found out who Alan Wake was because he didn't know, and then he went looking for him in Bright Falls. So that's kind of a different story altogether, but that's who this guy is. Tom the Poet. This one wasn't on the original game, was it?
No.
Because this is the remaster we're playing. Obviously, you know, most people who played are going to know this. I think on the original game it just says, didn't it just say Tom the Poet?
Mm-hmm.
Like it didn't have any of these details on here. So now what we're getting in these details is we're getting a terrifyingly strange dive into the dark depths of an artist's mind. Okay, so that is really important to remember. The film by Thomas Zane, we've heard that he's a poet. Later on in Control, we hear that he was a European filmmaker. So, you know, it gets a little bit confusing. But I think we're going to find out more in part 2. So let's see, it mentions, what is that? A pinprick of light in an ocean of darkness. Okay, whatever. Thomas Zane is the diver. So he's just the diver, nothing else. Barbara Jagger as the dark presence. Cynthia Weaver as the Lady of the Light. Emil Hartman as, what does it say? The assistant?
Yeah.
Okay. Written and directed by Thomas Zane and based on a novel by Alan Wake.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. A bunch of characters just got names.
Yep.
So, and you know, most people aren't going to remember that on their first playthrough. I didn't even look at it, I don't think. But a key thing here is not just that first couple sentences, but a dark place and not a lake production. So what that eventually translated to me as that the dark place is the artist's mind. Mm-hmm. It's not a lake. So we're taking a terrifyingly strange dive into the dark depths of an artist's mind. Does that make sense to you? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, kind of more as a metaphor rather than literal.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and it kind of exemplifies what Alan Wake's character is all about.
Yeah, that's like the precursor to like the actual, you know, what is behind all of this.
Right.
Now that leaves us with you know questions later that we'll get to that will also probably have the same question for Alan Wake 2. Mm-hmm. And we'll get to that maybe towards the end. So let's move on. And speaking of, here we go. So the floating lamp that will become known as Thomas Zane. So what's cool about this that we pointed out in our gameplay is that the helmet, it's all the little round like windows on the helmet where the light's coming from. Back in the old days, like when they had these helmets, they called those lights. So, you know, that's kind of a cool thing. They use that. But Alan already saw this. He saw this at the beginning when he looked at the poster. And that to me seems like kind of like a perfect way to capture light because it's formless, right? Mm-hmm. Light is formless. Darkness is formless. And what we need, obviously, what Alan needs in the story is some form for these two entities, the dark entity, the bright entity, whatever, to take on some type of form. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's where the idea for the diving suit came from, was from not only just the picture in the beginning that had no name or face or anything, but also the movie poster as well. So you'll notice that he'll make a sound like a light switch cord.
Dream like haze.
And I never really caught on to that until after playing Control and the whole light switch. And yeah, it doesn't make the same sound. It makes like this crazy sound in Control. But when you think about like an actual, what a light switch would sound like, that's the sound it makes. So we also mentioned on this part that it's not so much a tutorial as much it's not a traditional tutorial. It's almost like he's being told, being taught, being coached by this, voice in the sky, what to do, what everything is. And as a matter of fact, it even knows about the hitchhiker. And Alan never mentioned the hitchhiker to him. He just automatically knows everything that Alan is going through. So that's noteworthy. Mm-hmm. So now we get in some even cooler stuff. The bridge. We did point this out in our playthrough. We didn't get to spend a lot of time elaborating on this first part of the bridge, but if you watch the train very carefully, which direction it's going when he first gets out of the car, and then when it goes to gameplay, just watch the difference. Okay, so it's moving to the left with cargo. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now we have another one coming immediately the opposite direction with no cargo. What's cool about that is that if you've seen anyone go through free camera mode, those tracks, there's only one set of tracks. It's not a two-way thing. Only one train can travel. So I don't think that it would be possible for them to, like, say, switch tracks somewhere that quickly. Mm-hmm. So that kind of like gives this idea. It's funny because in some of these, I don't even know like how much time has gone by between gameplay and cutscene. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it seems like a lot of time has gone by that we didn't get to see. But so that's one cool thing. And there is another cool thing about the bridge later. We'll point it out when it comes up. Again, we did in our gameplay as well. Yeah, right now Alice is trying to get him to take a picture with Pat Maine. And she initially says, what did she say? Let's act like we're on vacation, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Which is a weird thing to say. But when you play the first time, you don't really think about it much until the game really gets going, or you play it again, and then you're like, wait, they are on vacation. Why are they supposed to be acting like it? Why does she want him to act like it?
Yeah.
As they approach the dock, there's going to be some very interesting people that you won't really be able to see very well. But one of them we pointed out in another one of our videos. Which one was it? Oh, can Alan Wake see his own AWE? We did a video on that. Definitely recommend you watch that one because that's the closest that we've come so far to any sort of like predictions about what's going on in Alan Wake 2 or what might be going on in Alan Wake 2 as far as two different realities happening, and Alan may not be able to see that happening. So there are a few people in here. If you want to, you can look for them, but otherwise go watch our other video. And let's see what we have here. We have Mott. So he's already established Pat. Mott, actually Mott and Pat, these are both optional, but the same outcome will happen. Alan doesn't have to go see Mott, but he'll still remember him later. Same thing with Pat. He doesn't have to interact with Pat, take that picture, but Pat will still remember him over the radio broadcast later and say, oh yeah, I just met Alan, I just met a celebrity on the ferry. So it doesn't change the story at all.
Yeah, I know the first time I played through, I talked to Pat, but I didn't talk to Mott, and still the same outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So everybody's favorite diner. The Oh Dear. And again, we did play through on this, so we're going to try not to repeat too many things about what we talked about the diner, about the characters mostly. We all know that Alan really doesn't care for Rose much, and he meets also some key characters in this game that we're going to see more of. So what I noted about this that I pointed out is that it takes on, when he's in the diner, especially right now that is cut to gameplay, The outside takes on like a real dreamy like quality. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, it does.
It looks really dreamy. It's gone really quiet. Before there were like a lot of like horns honking, and it was kind of bustling. You can see in the background there was Deputy Grant, there was Doc Nelson. So there are some other key characters that were like outside in the background. Here I'm focusing on that newspaper because it talks about the UFO lights. People are scared of these lights in the sky they think are, possibly UFOs. And you can see there's a headline there, and it says, "Local park ranger, forest no more dangerous than usual." Things are weird here. People go missing. Shit happens.
It's a strange place.
It is. I want to go there. So, yeah, Stucky. Here's the big bad bitch right here. Now, I think we mentioned in our gameplay that, like, why didn't Alice just go in, right? Mm-hmm. The same outcome would have happened. She would have got the cabin key and the map likely from Barbara Jagger. They would have ended up at the same place. That's all she wanted, was for them to go to the cabin, right? Mm-hmm. So it would have ended up the same. But he has to go meet these characters because they're important to him.
Yeah.
And you put the lime in the coconut. And we couldn't use it.
That's
a lot
right.
of music in this game. Okay, I mentioned this in the gameplay too, that we checked all the doors to make sure that Barbara Jagger didn't, slip out the back. So, at least that's the name that she has been given. The Anderson brothers, yeah, they refer to him as, they refer to him as Tom in this one, or Zane, one of the two, because when they meet him again later, we specifically didn't talk about why. And yeah, there we go, Tom. And I'm not going to talk about that until the analysis. So we'll do that one later. But I mean, obviously we've got subtitles on, and it's a thing people have mentioned often, and it's still very confusing, even to me. So, so here Alice, she catches on. She says that she asks Alan if she's sure that this is the right place, because the cabin was supposed to be near the lake, not on it. So she's questioning that, but she dismisses it pretty quickly because, hey, this is cool, right? This is better. So now we have Alan back up at the car, so you can see what a crappy parking job that Alice did. And I'm pretty sure I didn't say why, but that park job that looks to me like it'd be difficult to get out of. Mm-hmm. Because you'd have to pull up onto the balcony or the dock. The balcony. There's like a balcony up there, because that barrel that's right behind him, it doesn't move. He would have to run over it if he was going to back out. Mm-hmm. So he'd have to do this crazy 50-point turn just to get turned around. And then there's a gate. So that's something else they have to mess with. But what I'm going to focus on here is kind of strange. And we could chalk it up to, the design, the software, whatever. But if you see, there's a perfect line right there. And it's like, I'm not sure if it's supposed to indicate a threshold, entering a new threshold or whatever. But if we back it up a little bit and see that right in the tire tracks, and there's more than one set of tire tracks. We know that Mott had gone there looking for them later on. But there's more than one set of tire tracks. And the tire tracks, if you look at where they go, there's a little plant there, and that thing should be flat. Because they would have just driven over it. It's kind of strange that, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's kind of strange that as soon as they get to this certain point, things are kind of different and weird.
It'd have to be one resilient plant.
Yeah, just have to pop right back up. So there's the books from Thomas Zane. And the clocks, all the grandfather clocks have no hands, except for the one in the study. So it's hard to know what time it is in this game because none of the clocks work. It seems like Alan's cell phone clock does, but we'll get to that later.
For a moment, the oppressive feel of the nightmare I had seen on the ferry returned. Damn.
Now, this is really cool because he just said that he saw that in a nightmare. But if he saw it in his nightmare, why did he not recognize her in the diner? You know what I mean? So that was a cool little thing I never really caught on to until playing it a couple of times. But yeah, she's definitely in his head from the beginning. I just don't know why he doesn't recognize her. At least we're being told this in the story. There's details that we're missing. So that I thought was kind of cool. And more things like that happen, we do point out.
The Deerfest guests have already started to arrive. Just ran into one on the ferry. A famous artist, no less. We'll see if we can rope him into an interview later on. Now, let's go to the phones. Caller, you're on KBF-FM.
Hi, Pat. It's Rose.
Why, hello, Rose. What's on your mind?
I know who that famous artist was. It was Alan Wake, wasn't it? He's my favorite.
So now everybody in the town knows that he's there. It's not a secret anymore. They don't mention his wife, though. They don't mention Alice, but now everyone knows. So that's kind of interesting later when he goes missing. It doesn't seem like anyone's really looking for him. And this is kind of important, too, how he addresses the lake, how he describes it.
The water was clear but dark. It looked very deep.
And so the next time he comes back, he's going to say this.
The water was black. I couldn't help but imagine all sorts of horrors lurking in the depths below.
So it went from clear to deep to black. To black with all kinds of horrors lurking underneath, or at least that's what he can imagine. So his imagination is going. That's a good sign. Okay, the reason why I'm focusing on that is because that's eventually where Alice is going to leave her boots. Now, she doesn't hang up her jacket. There's 2 coat racks in there, but she doesn't use them. They don't even bring in their luggage. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm. They don't bring in their luggage, and but she does take off her boots and the rest of her clothes. Mm-hmm. and we'll see later what happens to those, or at least to the boots. So here's another part where time passes between cutscene and gameplay, and we don't know how much time has passed. And that's kind of strange, for this game anyway. I mean, it can happen in other third-person games just fine, but when there's so many questions, it's hard to kind of ignore the fact that, hey, why has so much time passed between? I mean, he's in the same place. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's, on the other side of the lake or in the house or on the balcony. He's right at the same place, and it comes back to him much darker. So yeah. I know some of these sound like they're like little nonsense things, but they'll add up later, I promise you. And there they are. Alice's boots, they're stylish. They've got zippers on the sides. They're very New York, right? Mm-hmm. Her jeans, set out there to deceive him. So this is also one of those parts where you don't really catch on right away, because of how quickly they switch from one thing to the next. So here we are in cutscene, and then when gameplay comes along, the environment changes a bit, but when she starts first screaming, it sounds like she's screaming either at Alan, as if something is happening to him, or like she's screaming at Alan as if maybe he is doing something to her. And then when they switch to gameplay, she starts screaming like this, like she needs his help, right? She's screaming out for him to help her. But it didn't start out sounding that way.
Mm-mm. No, I didn't think so either.
Here's something I don't like. We don't get to see what Alan sees, if anything. We'll, I guess, see more later in the game. But when he opens the door, it goes to a cutscene, and we see him We don't see from his point of view. We see from a different point of view, a spectator point of view or something, but not the third person. And that was a problem for me because I really wanted to see what he saw. And I'm going to address that more in my analysis of Alan's writing because it is really important. So he wakes up here, got in a car crash. For some reason, and again, we brought this stuff up in our video, he has a big gash on the side of his head where what would he hit his head on, right? I mean, he should have had hit his head on the window of the driver's side, but there was nothing on the other side of him to hit his head on. So that already is weird. He may have already had that, you know? So I don't know, but here we see the creator's dilemma, of course. Now he's saying that he remembers something. He also said that he remembered that something had, or he knew, not that he remembered, but that he knew something bad had happened to Alice. So it's like, is his memory coming back or what? But okay, so we see a pair of boots there, black boots. Now, at first I thought they were Alice's. I don't think they are. I think they look like 100 other boots that we've seen, that we'll see throughout the game. Just these rubber kind of like work boots. And the car that just drove by there, that's an important thing that we addressed in our game too. We'll address it again soon. So we got our floating lamp. Alan's gonna get his first manuscript pages here, and I do mention in the gameplay that the title page does not look like a title page from a completed manuscript, and I sort of talk about, you know, why and how that's important throughout the game. So that is something we mentioned, and I think it's definitely worth keeping in mind. You know, at this point, you know, who knows how much has been written. A completed manuscript title page would have a word count and the author's information, like name, address, whatever, contact information. So it's definitely not completed. So I didn't really mention this, but it is important. So Alan, here he meets a taken Stucky. Now, in the manuscript pages, Stucky gets taken. It doesn't really say when exactly, but this is a week later. Oh, you know, a week after his bathroom incident with the dark presence. So he, you know, who knows how long it's been. But they've been looking for him, the authorities have. And, you know, so I don't know what to really make of it unless we get more details about how long he's been missing. I mean, did he get taken that night? You know, the night that Alan, you know, this night actually that we're talking about, that Alan, you know, went to his gas station, or was he taken long before that? And we know he was touched by the dark presence in the diner.
We just don't know when he was completely taken.
Another pair of work boots, a couple pair. I mean, some of these places have like piles of them, so those boots, it's like, I don't know. I know that in the prequel, Bright Falls, the main character, Jake, he, for whatever reason, he puts on this pair of rubber work boots just like those ones at the end of the game. I'm not sure why, but I guess they just like wearing those boots. I don't know. So, okay, I'm focusing on the full moon because let's just get it out of the way now. The full moon, it's full every single night. This is like over 6 nights. So yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind. Now this is great too because he's having this flashback and it includes Alice. And he, up to this point, so he says, doesn't know what happened to Alice. And then he just now saw the image of her getting taken into the lake by who he will come to call Barbara Jagger. Now, he hasn't said that name yet, so I think he just refers to as the old woman.
Well, I was just outside for a breath of fresh air, and what a night. I know most of you are probably in your beds by now, but if you're still up and around, take a moment. Step outside for a spell and breathe in deep.
I love that part. I remember that part. Step outside for a spell. I think that's going to be important later, especially in Alan Wake 2. And this is total BS. It is not a clear night, obviously. So that's kind of like, I think probably another indicator that Alan isn't quite where Pat Main is, where he's talking about. It's definitely, it's foggy, it's windy. Well, the wind picks up when there's Taken nearby, but it's definitely not this beautiful clear night with the stars out like Pat's describing. So that is something that we point out too. Okay, so we got more, more ammo, more guns, more work boots, and something really important, the calendar there, 2010 calendar. We're going to see some calendar stuff. And actually, we have video already out called Every Year is 2010 that we definitely recommend you watch. And there's some other stuff in there too, but we explain how every year is 2010, even in the flashbacks. So watch it. It's a fun one. Now we have Night Springs. Now, Night Springs, these are a whole different thing. I don't think we'll do separate videos on them just because I don't think that we're going to have the time. But they're really cool. They definitely, mean something to the game, to the Remedy Connected universe now. And yeah, they're worth watching. Any other videos that you might come across that have to do with Night Springs episodes, everybody's going to have a different opinion. But if we have time to, do some videos where we put our opinions in, then we'll do so. But these are great to watch.
At first, I kept finding the pages as if by accident. The book I couldn't remember was either a terrible and true prophecy or an act of creation that had rewritten the world. I began to hunt the pages feverishly, for they held the answer to the mystery. With it, I could save myself. With it, I could save Alice.
So if you notice there in that manuscript page, it sort of sounds like he almost forgot about Alice. You know what I mean? He says, save himself. And then a couple lines down, it's like, save Alice. So, I don't know. It just sounds like he almost forgot. Almost forgot about poor Alice.
What a crappy husband.
Well, what did she call him? A lazy bastard. Yeah. That's right. Okay, so here now is where he has to kill Stucky, whose only sin was that he had to go to the bathroom. So that's unfortunate. But the bodies disappear. So no body, no evidence. That is something I'll talk about later in my analysis of Alan's writing. But yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that had to happen that way.
Stucky seemed like such a nice guy.
Well, yeah, he rented cabins, and he even tried to get them their key after he got attacked by the Taken, or by the Dark Presence. So, yeah, he was nice.
Even as a Taken, Stucky's giving Alan some good advice.
About his health.
Yeah, about his health,
That's
recommendations for places to eat.
So now we're coming up on where Alan had his car accident. Now, that road, it only goes to one place. It only goes to the Cauldron Lake Lodge. So that's an interesting fact as well to keep in mind, is that he can't go anywhere else on that road. But that's the road he was on when he got in his accident. Okay, and here's where we're going to show you where why that car at the beginning, after he got in his car crash and he saw the car driving down this road. Now, we did go through this thoroughly in our gameplay, but we're going to show why it is that car could not be traveling on this road. Now, the Taken really give you some hell to get to this point. You have to fight your way here, but yes, that car could not have gotten through that. It couldn't have got through that roadblock there. So that is one direction that they could not go, and we didn't see them go into the gas station or anything like that. They could have, sure, while Alan was doing his trek through the woods, but it's not likely because the tunnel is blocked off too. So that car could not have been traveling on this road no matter what, which means something much bigger in a few minutes when the sheriff shows up. So these episodes that I hear called The Rider in the Cabin, these are good to watch. There's so much good information in these, and we'll go over some of it later. And one of my favorite things I talk about is Deerfest and how much it baffled me that a Deerfest had a whole lot of nothing to do with deer. So we talk about that more on our very last gameplay video, and like some of my thoughts about what might be the situation, and some of it is sort of like what we see in the trailer for Alan Wake 2, just based on lucky guesses and kind of some other things that we see in here. But yeah, that was one thing that always bothered me about this, is that there's no deer stuff for Deerfest, except for the float.
Mm-hmm.
It says something about hunting, but it doesn't say hunting what.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's another calendar thing coming up. And again, we explain this more in our video every year is 2010. Okay, so this is something that I didn't understand. It looks like Alan is waiting for her in the dark. Why would he have the lights off and not get attacked by Taken? I don't know, but everything looks dark in there. And then the biggest, most important thing here is that how did the sheriff get there when the roads were blocked? So that's something that we talk about in our gameplay, and I don't even think it's something you can really figure out. Mm-hmm. You know, it's impossible. This has a lot to do, I think, just with the writing. And if you see back there, a manuscript page is falling down, and he will not be able to get that manuscript page. I'm saying it's a manuscript page without any proof, but we've talked about it. I've studied it and looked at how it falls and compared it to, you know, other manuscript pages falling and the movement and what else could it be. And I could only come up with that there's a manuscript page back there. So they're still out there. There's still plenty of manuscript pages that are being left in odd places that he will not be able to go back and get.
Well, that's all for episode 1. We'll be back next week with another video for episode 2. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. Darkling Alley, out.
What he said.